Allora, finally, Mathieu. Mathieu. Mathieu Lisotte. Prego.
It's 15 minutes. The discussion. Grazie. So I'll start my watch. I have a really precise time watch, so I know I have 15 minutes, and usually I'm pretty good to fit in the 15 minutes. So my name is Mathieu Lisotte. I'm from Canada, actually the province of Quebec, which is the French part of Canada. And back home in life, I'm a master's degree candidate. I'm doing my master's thesis on how high school teachers work when stereotypes occurs in the classroom. So that's really related to my presentation here. I'm showing today a project I did in the past 2 years. And so you'll see images of this project, which I think will be very interesting for you. Also, I'm a lecturer at the university where I study, so I have the chance during my master's to have some classrooms, like primary school and high school future teachers, to whom I teach didactics, so how to teach. I teach them how to teach the program that I'm specialized in, the curriculum that I'm specialized in, which is called Ethics and Religious Culture. And this is a program that now has 10 years, that was implemented in 2008, where the pupils have to develop skills such as ethics, like ethic reflections, religious comprehension of the different religions that are in Quebec, and also dialogue. They have to practice dialogue. So those are the three skills that the pupils have to develop. And lately, since 1 month, I'm also a high school teacher, so I found that I had nothing to do, and so I took a full-time job as well as every other things I have to do. Yeah, so the plan of the presentation, I'll talk of the social context in Quebec. So who lives there? Who are the people that lives in Quebec? Also, why to address prejudices in the classroom, and then how to do it, and I'll show that by showing you one of the activity of the pedagogical guide, the teacher's guide that we implemented last year, in the last 2 years. The images that you see, they're from the exposition. There was an exposition prior to the teacher's guide, so those are images that come from that exposition. I'll talk later about that. So the social context of Quebec. So you have to know that Quebec is one of the 10 Canadian provinces. There's 10 provinces, and Quebec is the only French province. It's the official language there. But still, even if the language, the official language is French, there's a lot of ethno-cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, and religious diversity. If you go back 10,000 years ago, there was the First Nation that came, the Aboriginal nations, and we say the First Nations. So there was many different nations with different languages, with different beliefs. So right there, 10,000 years ago, there was diversity in Quebec. And then the French came around the 16th, 15th, 16th, 17th century. So the Europeans started to do business with the First Nations. And then the English came. So there was French who were Catholic the First Nations, and the English, who were Protestants and Jewish as well. And then the Irish came in the 19th century. So you had English, but Catholic English speaker. So another diversity. And then the Italian came for the building of the railroad. The Chinese came. The Ukrainian came before the World War I. So already there was a big diversity in Quebec. And since World War II, this diversity has grown a lot. Now we have, I think I put the numbers. Yeah, over the last, it's not the last 10 years, it's 2005 to 2014. You see the country of origins of the migrants that came in Quebec. So 35% were from Africa, mostly North Africa, countries such as Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. 23% from, 24% from the Americas, Latin America, and 23% from Asia, and 19% from Europe. So that's a really diverse immigration. We have 50,000 immigrant person every year for 8 million people in the province. So there's a lot of diversity, mostly in the biggest city, which is Montreal, but even in rural areas and smaller cities, such as where I live, there is more and more immigrants as well. And so I talked about ethnocultural diversity, linguistic diversity, and there's also religious diversity. Because of the French heritage, the main religion is Catholic, but you see as well, between the last two census, the number of Catholic went down by almost 10%, and other religions like Muslim, well, Islam, and has grown up, it has doubled. Other Christian religions as well, and some like Buddhist and Hindu has grown a little. In Quebec, there's not such so much Indians and Pakistanis, but that's mostly that's more in Toronto, let's say. And no religious affiliation. This number has grown up a lot as well. So that's for the social context. Now, why to address prejudices in class? That was my biggest interest, and it's mostly because of the images that are used in the media. Those are some images that are used in traditional medias to represent Muslims. So you have like rich prince, those that you don't see them in Montreal. This is an image used to talk about Muslim people in Canada. So I don't know if you know Canada very much, but we don't have any desert like this. It's not the Sahara. It's cold actually, so that's not an image of Canada, but they use it in the media. Those are real images from the newspaper to talk about the Muslim with the AK-47. So that's not representative of the people. And the last one, the woman with the burqa. We see these images a lot, and same with the niqab. But it's about 100 persons in the whole province of Quebec that wear the burqa. It's really it's 0.01% of Muslim women in Quebec that wears burqa. So it's not relevant to show that in the media. And still, because it happens last week, I will talk about it, but there was a popular TV show, a French TV show in Quebec that happens in a police station. And last week, there was 2 episodes based on Muslim terrorists. So that's how, when they represent Muslim, when they show Muslim on TV, in the media, it's terrorist, it's images of violence, of rich people and submitted women. So, and that's not the reality of Muslim people in Quebec. So the exposition that happened, we followed 34 Muslim in the province to show that yes, some people, the religion is important. It's an important part of their lives. But there's also people that work. The first one, the man, he's one of the best union Quebec Union specialist. He knows about the Quebec Union, worker unions. But he's from Algeria. But he's still one of the best specialists. This is a couple. The guy is from Egypt, and her I don't remember. Maybe Saudi Arabia. But so there's different countries. Muslims comes from different countries. They came for school to Canada. And the last one, it's 3 young women's. Some wear the hijab, some doesn't wear the hijab, and they do volunteer work. So it's important to show that it's not only Muslim people are not only people that has a religion. They have other things. They work, they do volunteer work, and they have a life outside work and volunteering and religion. So that's the kind of images that were shown, which are, I think you see, pretty different than what we show in the media usually. And the other reason why we wanted to address prejudices in class is because the teachers, they avoid this topic because they feel uncomfortable to talk about it, because they don't know what the student will say if they talk about Muslim. Will the student will say, oh, all Muslims are terrorists, let's say. Will they say every Muslim woman is submitted to the man? So the teachers, they tend to avoid this topic. So we did this teacher's guide, and we listed 15 stereotypes that were more likely to come in class, and we also wrote what the teachers could say to deconstruct these stereotypes. Yeah. So, and you see, this is a very nice image. This guy, he accepted to be photographed in the mosque while praying, and it's a really beautiful image. So these images, we show them to the student. But one of the activity that we did is called the Wall of Prejudice. I think something's missing. Okay, they're not in order. The activity is called the Wall of Prejudice. So what we did, there's the board, and we just write Muslim persons, and we ask the pupils to come in front and to write what they associate with these words. So sometimes, of course, there is stereotypes, but sometimes there are words like mosque or prayer, Friday prayer, or Ramadan. Sometimes you get amalgam, like people will write stuff from like Sikhism. They will write turban or the kirpan, the small knife of Sikh persons. So so they come and they write it. We want them to write these words. We don't want to transfer them the stereotypes that we can have inside us. So as the students write it, they do it silently. It takes 15 minutes maybe, and then we can discuss with them about these words. Why did you write these words? Does anybody else thought that this word belonged there? Or did some people thought it didn't belong there? So we can talk like this. And sometimes it's good to have like long period of silence. Sometimes you can have 30 seconds, 1 minute of silence, and after 1 minute somebody will raise the hand and say, well, I wrote that because everybody at home said that, let's say, Muslims are terrorists. And then we, okay, so why do you think that your parents said that at home? Why is that? Do you watch a lot of movies like American Sniper? Or so we can talk about movies, the importance of the movies, that they construct this mental image, the stereotypes. The same with the media, the news. And they are teenagers, so they are 14, 15, 16 years old, and they were not born when the 9/11 happened, like in New York, but they all know what it means. They all know what it is, and we tell them it's because the media showed these images again and again and again, and you associated these images to Muslim. So we tell them it's not bad to have stereotypes. It's a normal process of the brain to categorize stuff. But then you have to know that those stereotypes, they transfer to prejudices. and then to discrimination, and then it hurts human rights. So we try to give them the tools to be able to think about their own stereotypes, the one they have, the one they will have, and to be critical about their own thinking. Because if we say this is bad to think like this, then they will go out of the classroom and they will do the same about another group of people. They must have the tool to be able to deconstruct these stereotypes themselves. So I said 15 minutes, I'm 14 minutes 30. So, but I think I talked about everything I wanted to do. So I can add that the students that like the activity the most, like we have students like black students, Muslim students, and it's really funny to see that how black students, even if we're not talking about them, they like this activity. But because for once at school, we were talking about minority group, a group that is not represented in the media. So they came to us and they say, you know, it's really nice, this activity, and we can talk like between the classes. We have sometimes just 10 minutes, but we can talk with them, and they say we should do this kind of activity more often. So we want the teachers to do it themselves. So we try to give them the tools, but sometimes it's even harder for them to do it themselves. So we have to go ourselves in the classroom. So thank you for listening.
Questions or comments?
There are two there.
Please, come.
Thanks a lot, Matthew, for the discussion. I think this discussion actually radiates so much in my mind because I'm a Muslim and I'm also black. I live in Western society. I live in Germany, so I understand how passionate it is to have this issue or discussion attached to me. And my family, my mom and every other person live in the United States. So it's so like you are actually talking to me. So, and what I'm going to say about all of these things, I'm not asking questions because you have said everything that has to be said. And I'm going to give an, I think, additional, like an addendum to what he has said. There are certain misconstructions or prejudices that still exist within the society. And during our section today, we discussed about some of these prejudices and how conversation can be heightened to a point where we can all come to a conclusion or a common ground. And one of the things that we concluded during our section was the fact that we don't all have to agree. You have your own religion, I have my religion. You have your belief set, I have my belief set. And all of this stereotype is stemmed out of the media and what narrative they choose to present to the world. And at the end of our section, what we concluded was, if you respect me and I respect you in accordance with whatever your faith and your belief or your sentiments are, we can come to a conclusion that, okay, I don't have to agree with you, you don't have to agree with me. But let's respect ourselves for whatever I choose to be and for whatever you choose to be. And at that point in time, we can come to a point where the world will appreciate each other and we can live in harmonious perspective. I think the idea of your implementation guide to how we can remove stereotype, because that's exactly where it starts from elementary schools, from secondary schools. Because the old image that we are being bombarded with every time, if you switch on the CNN now, there is no news of someone, a young black man buying a Ferrari or doing good things. The only new good things that you see about Muslims or black person or the minority group is something negative. And we need to begin to find a way to deconstruct all of this stereotype. Thanks and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for this amazing topic. And I believe Canada is showing a vivid example of how to prepare the children to become open-minded and tolerant grown-up people. I believe that today we talked about trying to change things from the roots, and I believe that the children of today are the leaders and the citizens of tomorrow. So if we start from the beginning, as you said, you're confronted with the children, when you instill these values and these morals in the children, you can imagine a better word than the one of today. Stereotyping and having prejudice about people from any religion or any race is destroying our word. It's very, very bad for our presence, and it really threatens our future. So I really wish if other countries would follow such a program, because it is the one that can ensure a very tolerant society, and it can establish a modus vivendi around the world. So thank you very much for addressing this topic.
Thank you. I thank you for your kind words. I want to say that even if I just want to say, because Canada has a really good reputation. We always say, oh, Justin Trudeau is so open-minded, the Prime Minister, and we have a very good reputation. But still, it's not a perfect country. So when we're inside, we're really critical of how the country works. And there's, I was talking with my fellow Canadian here, and like in Ontario, the Toronto mayor, he's a conservative, was just elected. Tomorrow there's gonna be election in Quebec, and the Conservative Party, which is not named Conservative Party, but he's going to be elected, most likely. And there are some right extremist groups that are growing inside the country, because even if all of you think that Canada is a big country, and it is a very big country, there's a lot of people who are scared that we're going to be invaded. And it's not because I laugh that it's funny, but some people are scared of invasion, of the loss of our values, and that's why we do this at school. But it's everywhere. I see it in the media, in the social media, even mostly in the social media. People who has like extremist point of views, they won't change their mind. They won't change their point of view. Never. So that's why when I was on a internet blog, and I was arguing with some people like for 2 days in a row, coming back 2 hours after writing again, and then I said, forget it. It's a waste of time. I will never change these people's mind. So that's why I decided to do more in school. It's not to indoctrinate teenagers, to give them the tools to critical thinking, and they can be totally in opposition with me, and I accept that totally. They can be the opposite of myself. They have to develop their critical thinking. So it's something that is hard to accept, that the teenagers and everybody can have another point of view of yours than yours. But if you want that freedom, if you want to develop critical thinking, you have to accept different point of views and that uncertainty, and it's hard to deal with that. So yeah.
Hi Mathieu, thank you for this presentation, for this well documented and also motivating presentation. You capture my attention, and that's a very good point. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. First is regarding the pupils. So you said that the tool is developed in order to help the pupils to be open-minded. But how about the teachers? Do you work also with them? Should they be at the beginning of your work? And second, if you have information regarding the impact of your work in the immigrants' life. Thank you.
First, for the teachers, well, what we did last year is that, well, 2 years ago we made the teacher's guide, and last year we started going in like forum for like here, but for teachers, for the program I teach, like ethics and religious culture. And so we went there and we give the like a 1 hour training about the guide. So yeah, we did that, and the school system is made that there is the Ministry of Education and then different school boards, and under that schools. So some school boards, they ask us to go in their school board and to do the same training, but to the teachers. So we did that. We maybe saw about 100 teachers. So that's a good way to do it. And also I show this project to the student that I see at university. So yeah, maybe that would be around 200 teacher, 100 teachers working actually, and 100 future teacher. And for the other question, you wanted to know if we saw impact on immigrants from this project. No, it's really hard to keep in touch with the schools that we've been to, because the teachers, they're really overloaded with work. So we don't want to contact them 1 year after and say, and they don't necessarily work still at the same school. So it's hard to keep in touch and to know what's the long-term impact. So there we just have to cross our fingers and hope that something somewhere was good. So I like to say that we plant a seed in the student's mind, and we never know if it has grown, but we hope that the seed with the time has grown and the idea made its way. Yeah. I hope it answers your question.
Thank you very much. Like I always like to do, I always like to look at it from the theoretical position first before bringing up my point. When you're looking at this aspect of prejudice and stereotype, you look at the works of Gabriel Hammond and Signe Weber. He talked about the cognitive, affective, and evaluative, right? And this is what commodifies people's perceptions or people's opinion about a particular phenomenon. Okay, now moving out from that little bit, the number one agent of socialization first is the family. And the family has a whole lot to do in trying to reconstruct or deconstruct the narrative or the perception about somebody's particular ideas about social phenomenon, and your focus is the children. So what are you doing? Not just to talk to these kids now, but to bring this information of the stereotyping to the family, being the number one agent of socialization. Because we cannot talk about the children and doing it in schools. By the time they leave the school, they return back to the house. And they now go back again to the first level of cognitive, which means that your project you might have done may not as really have a much evaluative impact. I don't know, but that is just my own thing. I just feel like maybe you should also focus on more policies towards ensuring that you can bring this kind of project to the family. Also, we are talking exclusively about the stereotype we face against the Muslims. How about the stereotype with the Christians, right? So we have to have a balanced argument here now, balanced presentation here. So how then do we now talk about stereotype as it relates to Christians? Because I've seen series of cases, because I did my law program at the University of Ibadan. There was a time a lady, sometimes around, was it 2005 now, the lady went to the mosque and she was like saying that they should repent, they should give their life to Christ, and all of that. And the Muslims took over and they said they were going to kill her in the University of Ibadan. That's where I did my law program. So, and it was a big case at that time. So how then do we now bring about this stereotype, like seeing someone who is a Muslim, see someone who is a Christian, and you say, oh, the next thing a Christian approaches you to talk to you as a Muslim, and you think the person is possibly trying to convert you or to ruin your faith. So, and this has a whole lot, because while this case occurred at the University of Ibadan then, in 2005, it was a very big incident, which, because the lady who went to the mosque at that time, she's a Christian, and the Muslims at that time, community at that time, wanted to victimize that lady, to punish her. So this is the whole lot of balanced argument I want us to bring it to. Well, when we talk about the Muslims, stereotype against them, let's look at the Christians also. For instance, I know about some places in Nigeria, because I always want to be pragmatic, that you cannot marry from the Muslim family, because exclusively they say it's not possible. So the stereotype there, I think you should respond to that.
For this question about other stereotypes, I think it's true, and it's true for I know very well Quebec, and I know my country. I know Canada. I don't know what are the stereotypes in Nigeria, let's say. So this kind of work can be done as well about other, and not only about religion. It can be done about gay, lesbians, transgender. It can be done with poor people. It can be done with handicapped people. It can be done with pregnant women, men, about every kind of stereotypes. So that's why we work. This work was about Muslim, but that's why also we want to explain them how the stereotypes happen. It's a normal categorization in the brain. The brain works like this, and you have to understand how it works, and then you're able to be aware of your own bias, your own stereotypes. So you can do it for every kind of stereotypes. Yeah. About the family, it's hard to go inside the family, and as a matter of fact, I know that some students went back home and they talked about it to their teachers, not to their parents, and the parents called the school afterwards. So some parents, they don't like that we go in schools and talk about it. So it's hard to go in the family, but we don't want to be in opposition with the parents. My view, and there's a sociological researcher in Quebec who said the kids come to school with their, we call it like their first culture. In French we say culture première, their first culture, and the school, it doesn't destroy it, it adds a level upon it. It's like if you take a cake, the children come at school with a cake, a plain cake, but then we add the icing, we add the second culture. So that culture, it's about everything. It's about mathematics, about French, about history, about science. So that's, and you can add levels on that cake, and so you construct, you build something more. You don't destroy the first culture of the children, but then hopefully we can have a change on the parents, but that's not our main goal. Yeah. Maybe she, because it's your first question, your second question, and she wanted, maybe we can.
I'm gonna be short. You mentioned that you are using a tool right now. I'm interested to know regarding the results of your work. How do you promote the results of your work for the others to benefit from it? So if you are part of an NGO, or how can you share your work with on international level, maybe, as you pointed out? Thank you.
Well, if you want, actually the guide, the teacher's guide is available in French and in English. So as there's a computer, I could show you the way to get to it. It was an NGO that made it. If you research, because I could post it on the Facebook page as well, but maybe if you want, you can go that way. If you search the name of the guide, I'll write it. Is that Google? No, that's not Google. Use Google Chrome. That's a that's a subliminous. I'll go on Bing. I don't like Bing, but it's not good. Huh? What do you use in Italy? Yahoo? Yahoo? No, Google. There's no internet. Oh, that's why. Okay, but if you write, I'll write it on the Facebook page of the forum. I'll put the link. So, but like we did a job locally, like, but we didn't do it internationally because it's about people in Quebec, Muslim Quebecers. So it's less relevant. Even in the next province, even in Ontario, it will be less relevant because it's people from Quebec. So it's interesting as well, but the job of the NGO I work with for that project, it's not to promote it at the international level. Yeah, but I'll put it and you'll be able to use some stuff. The activities we made, I was the one who made 8 of the activities. So I think these activities can go, can be used in different contexts. There's about identity, group of appartenance, group. How do you say that? Like my soccer team, the orchestra. I'm playing trumpet in the orchestra, so the other player. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I was really interested in your work because I did my master's in Spain, and during my master's there was my thesis was focusing on intercultural peace. One of the ladies from Ukraine, she was presenting one of a paper, I think it was today, on steps of peace. I don't know if she's here. And then she talked about different types of peace. And then I introduced to her my thesis, which was intercultural peace. So during that period, because someone asked the question that this work you're doing is really nice in Canada, but I just wanted to make mention that in Spain currently, primary schools, there's a particular program that they just started promoting Vygotsky. He's a Russian writer, and he believes in communication, dialogue. And then so in classes they have communication interculturales, where the students come together and they talk about that. And then, like after the English classes, there is like 30 minutes where students come together. And do you know what they do? They make sure all the students in the class, these are like children from 8 years old up to teenagehood, yeah. So they make sure that after English classes, they divide all these students into like 4 groups of different minds. Like if she's from Spain, she will be in a group where some students are from maybe Cameroon. So it's Spain, Cameroon, India. Like you understand what I'm saying? Like a very diverse group, and they separate them and they bring them together. And then there is no teacher, because I am a volunteer with Cruz Roja Juventud in Spain. So I was invited to this school during my research, because I had to venture into this to understand what was going on, so I'll be able to write my thesis. And so I will sit down and I will watch the students, and so they had to communicate with each other, and it was effective because they actually started talking, started relating with each other, and it's compulsory. It's part of the curriculum in Spain. So that's something that I was really that I really appreciated in the classes, and also in Cruz Roja Juventud. When I was, because I'm a volunteer of Cruz Roja Juventud in Spain, and then I introduced to Cruz Roja a little class, and they accepted it, where I was doing almost what you're doing, but yours is like your focus is promoting the Muslim promoting non-violence and trying to change this perspective, this stereotype, and make people understand that it's not all about what the media is saying. But in my class, I was actually teaching intercultural peace, and also I was teaching sorry, I'm speaking Spanish. We are different but equal. So it was something going on in the classroom, also in Cruz Roja with the students. And I just feel if Canada is doing that, if Spain is doing that, and if there is this creation of awareness in every part of the world, then we could be able to distinguish between what the media is saying that is right and what the media is saying that is wrong. Because I believe in creating awareness. Yes, we believe that we can't change people's mind, we can't say anything, but little steps, like baby steps, we talked about that in one of the sessions, can actually bring about a change, because change makers don't just come about changing things in a day. It's baby steps that leads to this change, so to these changes. So if we can promote this, and if these practices, these activities can like spread out, then we could be able to say yes. Even though the one in Spain, we involved the parents. So during the classes, the parents were invited in Cruz Roja. They were in with the Red Cross. They were invited to join in this session. So I just feel I just said let me contribute to that, and also if other people here have this vision, they can take it back to their own countries and start something.
Yeah, thank you. And something you said makes me, I'll take maybe just 1 minute. Okay. So, and just to do a link with the title of the forum, which is Ethics of Complexity. And when I look at the images shown in the medias, I think they show simplicity. They show just one point of view as the truth. But there's no such thing for my point of view as truth. It's much more complex, and I think the kind of job that we were trying to do was to show the complexity of the reality of the identity of the people, of every singular person. So you're not only a Muslim, you're something else. You're much more than just one characteristic, whether it's religion or skin color or your social status. So yeah, that could be, I don't know if there's any more question. That could be like my conclusion. Yes. And thank you very much for your questions and your listening.
good afternoon. I'm going to speak in English in any case. Don't worry. I'm going to speak English. Maybe a bad English, but I try. So good afternoon. My name is Veva Battaglia. I am a researcher in the field of intercultural communication at the University of Venice, Ca' Foscari. So today my intervention is about languages, cultures, and possible points of view, the role of intercultural communication for learning and understanding. In fact, I would like to talk about intercultural communication and ethics, because if we intersect ethics and intercultural communication, we will see that they share something, that is the sphere of the values. Okay. So we will see today how culture can influence our perception of what is good and bad, right or wrong. I will show you some examples about fair play, honesty, but not only. I mean, on a comparative basis. We will talk also about consequences on communication and how to try to develop competencies for an effective intercultural communication. First of all, I will give you some examples, some cases to reflect upon. For example, if we see a car running very, very fast in the middle of a city, we will think that this car is making an infraction because it's something not correct from a loyal point of view. From this point of view. But if we will see that inside this car we will find a father with a child very sick, full of blood, all our perceptions will be different. We will see the same situation with another point of view. And of course, the value of life will be more important than the infraction itself. We will just forget about this infraction. But this simple example actually is based on some concepts which are actually different. I mean the concept of life and death, of health and sickness, of the concept of safety, for example. But this example also show us a Western point of view. So in different countries in the world, we will find different concepts of what is safety, what is health, what is sickness. So if we consider reality just from a small perspective, just from our window, we will lose a big part of reality. Another case is this one about Denmark. I've never been actually to Denmark, but I've read many articles about this strange for me habit, which is about leaving the children in the strollers just outside the shops and restaurants. And actually for me as a mother, as an Italian mother, it's quite strange, actually incredible, but I will tell you this. Some years ago, a Danish woman was arrested in New York because she had left her child in a stroller just outside the restaurant where she was having dinner. And she just didn't know what she had done wrong. Because in Denmark it was perfectly normally to leave the children just outside the shops and restaurants. So actually, personally, I do not know if it happens in Denmark everywhere, every time, but it seems to me that it's quite a normal habit. So what is for us just a social norm? What we consider normal? It's actually dangerous because this is not natural, this is not normal, it's cultural, and therefore it's different, okay? Another case, it's about wearing the veil. I know that there are different kinds of veil, but the point is, that for example, in Italy, there's a wide debate about this because somebody sees wearing the veil like a lack of freedom, a deprivation of freedom, whereas for other persons see wearing the veil just the freedom of living, of experiencing their own culture and their own religions. So it's the same thing, but with two different and opposite visions. Another case I would like to offer you to reflect, it's about bullfight. For some people, it's just a useless show where an animal has to suffer. For other people, it's important. It's something connected to tradition, to something folkloristic, to something also symbolic. So I'm not here to say what is right or wrong. I just want to give you these examples to try to think upon something which has a cultural basis, and therefore it can have also different points of view. As I said before, I'm collaborating with the University of Venice, and we have a laboratory which is called the LabCom. We deal with intercultural communication and teaching, language teaching. So we have also created a website, which is mappainterculturale.it, if someone of you is interested, but it's in Italian actually. And it's made to map the problems of intercultural communication worldwide. Actually, we have investigated some countries, but not all the countries. And you will find the pages of these countries, and for each country there are different items. For example, about values, the concept of family, the concept of knowledge, the concept of about money, the concept of religion. And also there's a page about loyalty, honesty and fair play, because I think it's really connected with ethics. So what is correct and what is not, what can I do and what I'm not allowed to do. This concept, it's actually very different from culture to culture. For example, I will give you some examples, but I know that among of you there are some people from Russia, India, so please, you can of course integrate or even contradict. That's no problem. My point of view is also a linguistic one. So, for example, in Russia, as far as I know, being cunning is something almost a synonym of being dishonest. Whereas in Italy, it's not the same. Cunning, it may have a bad shade, but it's something different from dishonesty. In Russia, also, there's a wide sense of helping each other. So it's something very the people feel. They are used to help each other. So there's no even the need to say always thank you. In Italy, instead, we feel this this need to say thank you all the time for everything. And it's interesting because, for example, a friend of mine told me he's living in India he has been living in India for like 20 years. And he told me that in India sometimes it's even inappropriate if you say thank you too much. So I think it's quite interesting, this difference. Just to give you some example about Africa, we have just done a study about Sudan. And for example, in Sudan, there's high respect and interest for respecting the values, the harmony, but they lack a little of organization. So sometimes they say, okay, we will do this, instead they will not do this. But it's not because they are lying, it's just a problem of disorganization, let's say. And then another thing quite interesting, I think, it's this concept of guanxi, which is present in China. It's a sort of web of relations that you start to build since when you are a child, or your parents build for you. It's a web of relations, not only of family relations, but also friends or persons that you know. And you know that for whole your lifetime you can trust on this person. When you need something, you can ask them. I guess that in Italy there is something like this, but not so strong and lasting as in China. So I think that when we talk of intercultural communication, we of course are talking about language communication, but we are also talking about behavior. So we need competencies to create an intercultural dialogue. At the university we have elaborated, actually Professor Balboni and Cohen have elaborated this model to start to approach intercultural communication. So these are the aspects which come into play when we, in every communicative event: verbal aspects, non-verbal aspects, and values. But of course, knowing these differences without knowing how to put into practice these differences will be quite useless. So they also have studied about intercultural abilities which are needed to put into practice our knowledge and to know how to behave and communicate effectively with the others. So I will not explain all of this. Maybe we can discuss about this later, but I will just draw your attention about, for example, the observation, like the centered observation. So trying to see ourselves as in a third person, or for example the use of empathy and the negotiation of meanings. That is, when we are communicating, we ask, for example, we ask, but what do you mean by, are you really saying that? So it's something to check communication, okay? So this is actually the point. We should start to notice when we communicate our paradigms, because and we should not take for granted that our paradigms are the only ones and the only one which is right. I've tried to translate this statement of Umberto Eco, which I think is really the summary of all this presentation. And he says that just reflecting on our paradigms means that we are ready to tolerate everything, but it also means that there are some things which are not tolerable for us. And I guess it's almost the point that the guy who was talking before was showing. So the role of intercultural communication, I think it's a sort of education to doubt, and it's also a training to consider that there are other possible perspectives. So intercultural communication should teach us to say, okay, this is my paradigm, these are my limits, if we wish. I have my own opinion, my own perspective. You have your own perspective. Now that I know that there are some differences, I can try to, with of course the use of intercultural abilities, I can try to go a step forward towards you. I can try to make a shift. I can try to integrate your vision in my vision, but it doesn't mean that I have to renounce, to forget my opinion, to choose the other one. Okay, so we don't need to forget our values, our opinions in favor of the others. It means just that we can try to understand the other perspectives, and that these perspectives are just as valid as our perspective. And of course, knowledge and understanding are at the base of every process, even if we are at school. So of course are at the base also of the relational process, which is actually the base of dialogue, which is the reason why actually we are here today. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'm here. Sì, siamo Então, questo? Sì.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice presented, and I really appreciate that you expressed it clearly this. And my question is related to the judgment suspense that you've mentioned there. Could you please tell me more? Thank you.
Judgment suspension is related to the fact that it's about actually prejudice. So prejudice actually it's something really natural. It's something my colleague Matthew mentioned it about this. So actually prejudice is something very natural for our brain, because prejudices are connected to reasons of the economy of the brain. Okay, so brain needs to simplify. Okay, so that's why we need categories to simplify. It's an activity of our brain. Of course, simplifying, we risk to have some prejudices, because if we just consider, oh, okay, these are Italians, these are Canadians, these are Chinese, we are under the same label, unifying millions of people. And of course, this is not possible, this is not correct, because each of us is different from the other. So the judgment suspension is related to the fact that when I approach a situation or a person, I should not start thinking, okay, she's talking to me, but she's a woman, she is maybe lesbian, she is from Spain. So it's just approaching the other without prejudices. It's approaching the other without starting, I mean, and also this is also related to the attentive listening. We should not talk to each other being so in a hurry to answer, to give our opinion. We should just stop, reflect, suspend our judgment and listen to the other. And maybe also use our negotiation of meanings. That is, are you saying that to clarify the message, both that we receive and that we say? I don't know if it's clear. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I would like to add more about what you said. We really need active listening. We usually listen to respond and sometimes to attack, but we have to listen in order to understand the other and to adapt with him. Adaptability is a very important skill as well. I would like also to ask you, how would you address the double standards in judging the others, and sometimes prejudging and stereotyping? For example, this image always pops up in my mind, like maybe Europeans, or I don't know, Christians in general, or Europeans, when they see a nun of the church which also wears a veil and she's covered, maybe they would respect her, right? But when they see a Muslim who is also covered and having a veil, and it's her right and it's her own freedom to do that. And by the way, in the religion of Islam, nobody has a right to impose that on her. It must be of free choice. So how can we address these double standards? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this example, because actually this comparison with the nun, it's something that I had never thought about and never heard. But it's perfectly, it's okay, because it's the same. But the point is this, that for example, for me as Italian, as Christian, I had never thought that the veil of the nuns could be compared to the veil of the Muslims. But actually, it's the same. It's the veil, and it's covering the head. So, But I think that the problem is this, that we see we consider a fact what we see in the others. We are almost never aware of our diversity. That's the point. So this is what I wanted to explain. We should be aware. So awareness is the first step for knowing ourselves. Is the first step to later know the others. So that's the point. Sono altre domande?
Thank you for your presentation. Well, I think it's interesting to study ethics from a cultural point of view. What I remarked also that used mostly cultural etiquette in some countries. I don't know if it's really applicable in terms of studying at the ethical paradigm in general. However, I'll go from that and actually just point out to the importance of considering ethics as a paradigm that might be contaminated by the cultural, the social, and whatever external. The idea is also to consider ethics as something that starts from the self, from the Ana perspective. For instance, when you spoke about the Spanish context and the treatment of animals, for instance, the fact that you are there, born in that cultural environment, doesn't make you adhere to that, right? So the idea is to develop consciousness of that, consciousness of the ethical paradigm, consciousness of the vulnerability of considering it as something rigid, static, not in synchrony with the project of becoming of the individual. I mean, your perception of the ethical might change all along your life, and obviously education has a very crucial point in here, like the providing or more or less making the individual at an early age be conscious of ethics, of the ethical paradigm, of the importance of constructing your own perception of that, and just adhering too much to commonality when it has to do with ethics, which means common ethics, our ethics. After all, I think we are mapping ethics here through geography, which is, for me, a bit not on point when it has to do with that. I mean, geography is a construct as ethics are, as culture is. I mean, it is actually imaginary boundaries that we constructed, after all. So I don't want, that's a personal point of view, I don't want ethics to be in prison of culture, the prison house of culture, the prison house of language, the prison house of the social. In a sense, it might be more or less out of an authentic will, which is a point I made in the paper. And it's interesting to study it from a cultural point of view, however, not solely, that's all.
So my intervention actually was not meant to be philosophical or about legal issues. I just wanted to show how culture can influence our perception of what is good or not, right or not, and so on. Since ethics should actually investigate what is correct or not, what we should aim at, what should be, yes, good and bad, just to simplify, okay? But the point is this, that culture has actually an influence, so we can never say in an absolute way, this is good or not. Personally, I could say that for me, and I underline for me, there are some values which are not negotiable, for example. But I didn't want to reduce to ethics to a geographical issue. I just wanted to show how culture, which is of course related to geography in somehow, had some influences. For example, the example about bullfight, which is of course something really traditional in Spain. I'm not even sure from a legal point of view about what's happening about bullfights nowadays in Spain. I'm quite sure instead that bullfights are not legal in any other country. So this is the point why culture is so connected also to the legal system, and also in this sense to something which is connected to our higher values and to the structure which should regulate our lives. But since there are so many differences from country to country, then it's difficult to find, I think personally, some values which are absolute, because the very value of life, it's not the same in all the countries. I mean, the idea of sickness, the idea of life and death, it's different in Italy in comparison to some very poor countries where people live every day and they know that possibly they will live until 40 years if they are lucky. So I guess that and that's also why, if we consider that the very idea of health, it's something so so untouchable and so different, we should be aware that we are not able to judge the decisions of the others. So I think also that we should try to be how to say in someone else's shoes to understand some situations. I don't know if it answers fully to your questions, but of course it's another question.
Sorry, I really didn't want to contribute because it was very clear what you were saying, but as I said, my 2 years in Spain, 2013 to 2015, I never went once to watch the bull because it was very close to my house, because it's the bullfight. It was very close to my house, and it's a very beautiful podium, very big, and many people go there just to watch the bull. But the issue is, if you look into what goes on with the bull and you place yourself as a human being, you would never understand why such a culture is still going on. Because it's not just that the bull comes out to showcase his power. He's being tortured at every moment, and that's why he's violent. You understand? The bull naturally can be walking as a normal animal, but when it's being tortured, his violence increases more, and that's what creates the excitement. So we, as peace master student, we started carrying out a peace protest against the bullfight during our first year, our second year, and then several Spanish people connected, and presently now there is a law that is going on in Spain to stop the bullfight. It's a process. It can't happen just immediately, but presently there is a process going on to give the bull the freedom to be the bull, protesting against this. So I think that step is already a baby step and a positive step towards fighting for the freedom of the Spanish bull.
Okay, thanks. In fact, possibly it's something connected to the older generation. Probably the ethical issues are more felt from younger people. Other questions? No.
Thank you for these presentations, and we have a little pause because the interpreter needs a little pause, break, and Viertel? No, Viertel is Deutsch, but it's German. After 5, we are again here, and we start the general debate. I think we have so many to say, and we will see. When you come back, you have to take the head here, and please sign, and don't forget to give back. Basta. Here are plum cakes. You can eat the cakes, and